Hi everyone, welcome tonight to our Svitla AI panel discussion. I'm so happy to have you all here. This is SF Tech Week, so it's a very exciting week in San Francisco. Many events happening all around us. There's 3 in this venue alone. Very happy to have you all here, so welcome clients and guests. We're having a very exciting panel tonight. And we have some of our clients joining us, some people from Florida, Australia. Andre's from Australia. So it's a very multinational panel tonight. So I just wanted to say a warm welcome. I'm Cindy Ann Lewis. I'm CMO of Svitla Systems. Our CEO, Natalia Anon, is in the audience as well. And there's a lot of familiar faces in the audience too, so lovely to see some of you back again. So tonight we'll be focusing on scaling with AI innovation from pilot to Powerhouse. I have a very well-regarded panel here. I have Johann Beukes, we have Mykola, and Andre, and Naveed. So I'm just going to take a little minute or two to introduce yourselves, if you can all just speak to your backgrounds, and then we'll get going with the panel. Thank you.
I'm Naveed. I'm head of engineering for Swift Media. We are famous for one of our gaming products called Blitz. It's the gaming stats and coaching product, but we have other products too, which is, we have a Dino bot for Discord management, and we are working on some of the AI initiatives more recently, as a lot of other startups are doing. So we are on the bandwagon as well. So that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Andre Koot. I'm our Executive Vice President for APAC for Svitla, and you probably guessed I'm the show Australian. Pleased to be here. I take care of our business in Australia, Asia and India, and hope to bring a slightly different perspective. Background-wise, been doing a lot of technology consulting for a lot of years now, but I'm definitely come out of that COO, CFO space, so very keen to ensure our AI investments give a return on investment, not just a nice had-to-have piece of technology.
I'm Klymenko. I'm CTO and co-founder in the company called Wisetack, which is a fintech company. We work together with Svitla for almost 7 years now. I have 30 years experience of building software products and helped to build some of the companies you may know about, like Lending Club, Varo Bank, and now Wisetack. And AI is the big theme for us, and I'm super excited being part of this conference and exchange some ideas about how we can scale that.
Hey everybody, welcome. Johann Beukes. The accent is South African, but I live in Florida. So if you confuse me and Andre, Australian, South African. At Svitla, I'm the Chief AI Officer. I help the clients, define what that roadmap looks like to get AI from just an idea into production. And that's what I've been doing for the past 15 years or so. Started with .com boom programming and moved into big data and AI right before this latest curve. So I have about, 10 years worth of experience prior to 2020 when things started blowing up. And that was one of the questions somebody was asking earlier. So the goal for me tonight is to make sure that we're focused on reality. How do we get AI into production? And then Andre is going to make sure that we always have an ROI attached to it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the great introduction. Okay, so I think we're going to start with you, Johann. What are some of the signals that a CEO or a business leader can look out to find opportunities for scaling with AI solutions?
That's a good question. So one of the challenges when you're running a business is to know when to make a move, right? If you've worked in the business world, that's always going to be a challenge. It's easy to look back and say, I should have, and I hate that. I'm a data scientist, so I want to have a prediction, probability, and I want to make sure we can get there. So over the years, one of the things that we've done is we've developed a process, and with Svitla, our resources, teach them how do we go from small experiments to something that can run in production and scale. And the challenge for, as a founder, somebody that's focused on generating revenue, hiring, all those things is you don't want to miss the curve. So I try not to focus on the AI, because if you had to just read Twitter or X or LinkedIn every day and try and keep up with AI and run your business, it's not possible. The amount of information, if you're attending all the events this week, you guys will agree with me. So what do you look out for? Well, in your business, there's going to be signals. There's going to be signals like, for instance, you need to save money. As a founder, that's going to be important. You need to improve productivity. You have compliance issues. So when you ask me what kind of signals, there's no AI signal. If anybody tells you that, unless you're Google or Apple or you're creating open AI products for AI companies, the signals you're going to look for is your business signals. So, and this is one of the things that we emphasize when we work with our clients is when you're looking at your business as a business owner, you're definitely looking at different than the CFO or whatever. If you're hiring somebody, you're not hiring them because of their resume necessarily, right? You're interviewing them, you're looking at their job history and stuff like that. So it's always going to be, what does the business need? And very few businesses need more AI. What they need is more solutions. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Johann. Kola. We're having some sound challenges tonight. Can we fix the sound? Thank you. Kolia, if you could tell us about some recent AI challenges within your business, and how did you go about overcoming these challenges?
I agree with you, Johann, that business needs should drive the decisions about application of AI. And what happened with us is that when all of the explosion of technologies recently, AI technologies started, it was very difficult for ourselves to even to get a deep understanding of where we should focus, because the amount of the news and the depths of those news were so there were so many of things happening that it was difficult to understand what is really relevant to what the companies like Wisetack need, and to figure out to have sort of a mind map of what the current situation of AI is, and making a decision which part of that map really matters to our company. That was one of the first challenges. Another one is that obviously AI was new to many of us. The challenge was to change the culture of the company to think in terms of AI, to look for opportunities in the business to apply solutions which could make a difference. And that required a special effort in the company to make it happen.
Can I quickly add there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned something there, the change management, and this is something we'll probably get to, some of the obstacles or some of the challenges when you have AI projects, especially these days, getting through all the noise and then getting your team on board so they understand what's valuable versus what is just hype. And that change management, a lot of times, is where companies miss out. They've got the technology, they've got the investment, they've got everything, but what they forget about is that there's people involved. And you need to kind of do training along with that. People's jobs are changing, and you need to be okay with explaining why it's changing and how the AI can benefit them. And big companies are doing that. Small companies are when I say doing, missing that. But change management, I think, is a really big, important factor. And I wanted to just emphasize, you mentioned it, but I want to make sure that's a clear fact there.
Thanks, Johann. Andre, so Andre comes at an angle with a very strong finance background, so very happy to have that perspective on the panel tonight. From an investment strategy perspective, how do you define a successful AI project beyond the POC stage?
Great. Good question. And it's, I know people ask me, it comes from the finance, and everyone talks numbers. And certainly any good CFO will look at the numbers and look for a return on investment. But what you're really looking for as a CFO is this achievable? Is this actually going to work? It's more than just what does the calculation say. And so you've got to look at, when you've done your proof of concept, did it actually solve the intended problem? If it hasn't achieved that, well, how's it going to scale if it hasn't solved the original problem you're trying to do? So you're looking at that. you also touched on it earlier, and I'm a big believer of this, as well. It's one of the things I talk about after 20 odd years of doing business transformation, is that whole change management and taking the team on the journey, because people seem to forget that any transformation, any technology is still a user at the end of it, even AI. And if we're not conditioning and getting acceptance from our people that is a tool to help them, they're just going to reject it, and it will go the way of beta videotapes or any other technology that was great and never succeeded. So we've got to be conscious that, yes, the ROI has to be there and it needs to work from a business case point of view, but it also needs to cover off the business problem. Did it actually work? And then cover off the change point of view. Is the team actually buying into it? Are we actually going to be able to get utilisation of this? Sorry, Google, that's the accent.
So we're going to save the Q&A for after the panel. So please, that actually meant to mention that in the beginning. So absolutely, your questions are so welcome. But we're going to have a pause and do the Q&A directly after the panel, or directly as we finish the questions for the panel. But thank you. Please put it on ice. Thank you. So Naveed, this one's for you. Can you name a few recent AI projects you implemented, and how did Svitla help you with those problems?
Yeah. There's one project I think that comes to mind. Right now I'm going to riff off of something Johann said, which is, you have to look at the business signals. AI is not the secret ingredient into that'll fix everything. So we have been looking into a product that we can use to generate game assets. Social media is a gaming company. And of course, this is something that happens every day. AI is just getting started on doing that better and faster. So one of the products we have is where we can talk to an AI model while you're playing a game, and you can ask the model to change something in the game, and it can change it on the fly. You can say, hey, change this car to look like a Batmobile. And we can do it on the fly. And this has two challenging areas. One is just generating the texture is not that straightforward. We have models, stable diffusion-based models that do that. But that's half of the problem. You have the texture, you have the technology to generate it, but then you have to think about the cost of that generation. If you have even 1,000 simultaneous players trying to generate it, the cost, any CFO will tell you, can balloon very, very quickly. So building a solution that can scale with the, I would say, speed of AI is very critical, because a lot of startups are running into this problem of, just their runway, because just the thing that they're trying to do is so expensive to do. That's one of the products we are working on, and the way Svitla kind of helped us is two of the key engineers on the team who are dealing with this exact problem, Alejandro and Barreto. They have come up with a SLA-based solution. An SLA-based solution will look like something like this. Instead of trying to run as many GPUs as you can and make your CFO really mad, they've come up with a queue system where you can look at the speed of generation for every generation that's happening live and adjust your workload based on that. So for example, if you say that my SLA to my customers is that a generation will finish in, say, 30 seconds, and you see that it's taking longer than 30 seconds on average, it will automatically launch new nodes. And if it goes below 30 seconds, then it can wind them down to save money on that. This is sort of a, I would say, a revolutionary idea that we are experimenting with, and both engineers, they have been working hard to take it to the next level of using on-prem and cloud-based infrastructure combined to further reduce the cost of generation. I hope I answered your question, but happy to explain more.
I want to quickly add. So one of the things that you mentioned, which I would attribute as another reason why a lot of AI projects fail, is just the calculation of cost. And I want to give you guys just an example. So CTO worked with us a couple of years ago and asked, we wanted to run our own trained open AI model. I'm like, all right, why? And they're like, well, we want it to be smart enough, so when we ask it questions, and this was, I want to say, before RAG. If you're familiar with RAG, that's the more modern approach. But before that was really mainstream. That was, you just put everything into the model and you train it and it's aware of your data. So we calculated the cost. We worked with AWS and it came to about $25,000 per training session. So every time you train it, you have new data that's going to cost you on average around that. The challenge is that they needed that data to be up to date by an hour. So every hour running it is not feasible, right? $20,000 every hour, it's not going to happen. So what happens is a company like that had a prototype that worked really well, and they went to their engineering team. The engineering team was like, we can't really figure this out beyond the prototype, and they engaged with us. And they're like, all right, can you guys help us? And we had to kind of bring them back to reality and say, that's a great prototype. That's something that somebody built in their garage and they can demo and they can get VC funding and all that. It's not going to scale. And with our experience and with our, the people that we work with, those are the use cases we see all the time. So we know what to look out for. So to me, when I hear something like that, it's not unique. Like big companies. I don't want to mention the CTO of this company, but it was very revealing of how immature people's perception are of what AI, what the capabilities are and what the challenges are. The last thing I will say about that is, that's tied to it, is that a lot of times people approach AI projects as a software development project, and it's not. AI projects are probabilistic. A web app is very deterministic. You're getting an app in the app store. If I have to build you a model and your expectation is that it's 99.99999 accurate, I can't promise that. It's probabilistic, so I need to look at the data and all that. And that's one of the things that we've been really good at is over the past 10, 15 years is getting a system where we have proof of concept, small milestones where we measure value and ROI. There's ROI attached to the value. And then we scale it into the MVP and beyond. So it's not impossible to do, but it's small steps. There's no big leaps to get to AI, in production like that.
Those are super great points. Thank you so much for sharing those. You did not answer the question about why some AI projects fail. And I'd love you to continue because it's a great conversation. Thank you.
All right. So obviously, everybody wants to hear the successes, right? Nobody wants to talk about the failures. But they're fun too because you learn. That's how I look at it. I learn by failing. Energy company or utilities company down in Florida, one of the biggest energy companies in the United States, came to us. They're like, all right, we have to, we have all these drones that fly after hurricanes in Florida. You guys see the, trees, everything is down. And what we have to do is we have to analyze this data in order to determine, where we need to send people to go and fix, down power lines and stuff like that. So we have all these drones that we fly. We have private pilots that, contract for that period of time. And we have just huge amounts of data, video data that gets uploaded to the cloud. There's no way a human can analyze all of that. We can't hire enough people to go and watch thousands of hours of videotape, or videotape. That's how old I am. Of video after a storm. So what we did is we created models for them to analyze very specific, down power lines that's cracked and stuff. There's object detection and region detection and stuff like that. Traditional AI, this is before, vision language models and modern technologies. And we did that for a couple of use cases that worked really well. And then we run into issues. And it was the challenges, like for instance, water versus tar, like a paved road. We just could not detect it. And there was a whole bunch of use cases like that where this worked, but this didn't work. And then that worked, and this didn't work. And the problem is that if you think about the problem space there, if we want to replace humans reviewing it, we need to get 100% of all the things detected. Otherwise, we still need humans to go and review, 1,000 hours or whatever. So sometimes AI projects, you're going to run into this, they have very specific areas that they're good at, and then other areas, it's just the technology or the data or something is not there yet. So, and this is another reason, you're gonna keep me, or hear me go back to POCs, proof of concepts, because with all the experience and stuff, what we usually do is we'll pick the use cases that we know. Nobody really knows how to solve this. So we're inventing solutions for our clients to determine if that's even reasonable and possible. And to your question, where AI projects fail, we mentioned change management was one. Expectations that AI can solve all of that. Cost, that's one. But also back to the expectations, a lot of times is just knowing what AI is useful for. To your point, Naveed, if you were to run that same kind of process, but it cost you $1 million every time, you wouldn't do it. You'd change your business model. So there's a lot of factors to take into account before you get to success. But it boils down change management, expectations, and available data and algorithms.
Fantastic. Thanks, Johann. Fountain of knowledge right here. Kolja, this question is for you. Could you name a few recent AI projects, how you implemented them, and the challenges you are having around them? And how did Svitla help you with some of those problems? Thank you.
I can start from the last one, how Svitla helped us. So we work with Svitla for many years now, and Svitla engineers are part of all of our projects, including AI. And some of the AI topics, especially related to generative AI, were new to the whole industry as well to our people, and we were able to learn together and to achieve success together. In terms of what those projects were, it's a complex question because it is difficult to find the part of our business which was not affected by that. But I would like to highlight some categories of of the problems where we are applying AI. So the first one is operational efficiency of the business, and that is typically solved in our case by application of third-party AI-enabled products. So we are not trying to reinvent something that was already done by somebody else. But even when you are using the third-party systems, for example, a common example would be the customer support. There is a lot of development in that area, and definitely many companies, including ours, can benefit from that. So despite the fact that we don't have to build that, we still need to integrate with it, and we need to understand how to operate the system, which requires solid understanding of the AI principles and how to use that sort of system securely and safely. Another category is that engineering function itself. Myself, as being a leader of engineering function in the company, well, obviously the question of efficiency applies to us as well, and finding and choosing and learning the right tools to make engineering team more efficient, more productive. It's a big, interesting, and important area for pretty much every software company these days. The third area where we also needed to put some efforts, it's actually building the product features for our own product, which are AI-enabled, and that one requires a deeper understanding of the technologies themselves and AI technologies. And it doesn't have to be only the generative AI, which is so popular these days, but more traditional machine learning technologies are equally relevant to the business like us, and all of those three major aspects, operational efficiency for the whole company, efficiency of engineering team, building the product features which are based on AI and satisfying real business needs. So all of that are the categories of what we have done in my company. To be more specific, talking about maybe the most interesting part, which would be AI-enabled features, for us that is underwriting, KYC. KYC, it's a term meaning know your customer, which is a standard practice for financial organizations. Credit underwriting. So all of those fields are good areas for application of AI, and that's what we do. And Svitla engineers are helping us with building that.
So I want to add one more thing. So One thing you mentioned, and this, I know this is not on the topics, but everybody's heard of vibe coding by now. And I get this question a lot, and you talked about engineering and how to improve the engineering practice and the processes, right? So again, I'll go to a use case. We have a client where their engineers were using AI tools, and they're like, we're okay using AI tools, but we want to understand what we're paying for, what they're using it for, and if it's actually helping them. So what we did is we built a process for them, and we ended up where the AI, or the engineers, they're more productive, but we basically removed 2 roles in the process. So they before had a Scrum Master and they had a product manager. And those 2 roles became product owners. So what we did is, and I'll get into the details just for a second, just to kind of help. So we use Cloud Code, and we built agents and actions. And we basically had a process where we ran through at the beginning of the day. It goes to Jira, it pulls all the Jira tickets, it goes to Coda, I think is what we used, or Confluence maybe, and it got all the requirements, if it got updated or whatever. It then gave the engineer who's in their UI busy typing up a task list for the day and asked them, how much time do you have today? And the engineer will say, well, I want to take lunch, so 3 hours. And it will help them plan out the 3 hours. And at the end of the session, they're coding. So all of this is AI so far, then it goes to the human. Human is coding. Now it's lunchtime. We have another action in Cloud Code that we prompted, and it's taken a lot of iterations to get it right. But we'll say, okay, document what I've done, update Jira, and then we'll also update Slack, just so that we know, okay, this is where we're at. And that process is how we, I don't want to say eliminate, because people don't like that AI is eliminating jobs, but we kind of did. There's no need for a Scrum Master. We use, I said Jira. I'm mistaken. Linear. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Linear. It's like Jira. You guys use Linear? Okay, Linear is just a more modern Jira without all the fuzz. So it will update all the documentation for them. It keeps track of the session. And to me, that is the right use for AI. It's no, like you guys are all technology people. I don't really trust the AI yet to code for me. It's good at little things, but if you give, like an engineer free rein and no process, they're going to try and code everything with it. So what we did is we gave them a process and we showed them where there's efficiencies to get from that. So it's just, I know it's not really part of the topic, but it kind of ties into what you were talking about.
Yeah, I would add on the topic of engineers trying things, I would add that there is a particular aspect of that, which is cost management, which is when you are trying, and as you mentioned, it is a probabilistic system, and which is not especially good sometimes, not especially good in the big questions of software development, like when you do some architectural changes and so on. It's very easy to get into this mode of like one step more, let me try this thing. And then you end up finding out that you just spent like a few $100s without achieving a result. So what that leads to is that we need to understand how to approach this problem, how we can cost manage that, and how we can find the ways to measure how successful those tools are. And they are successful, don't get me wrong, it shouldn't stop us from using it, but we need to be conscious about the cost which is behind that and find the ways to get to the results in a meaningful way.
Cool.
Fantastic. Thank you. Really enlightening conversation going on here. Loving the panel answers so far. Andre, I have one for you. From a CFO and a governance perspective, why should CFOs treat data like an asset on the balance sheet rather than a technical problem?
It's a really interesting one, and I think this is, for a CFO, and indeed for boards and shareholders, starting to really challenge their thinking of what assets are in companies. When you think about the evolution of shareholder value and where it started, it was usually around the creation of assets, and that originated from physical assets. What we've seen, particularly and AI is challenging it even further, is that today assets are less about the physical and more about the intangible. And that presents different type of challenges to CFOs who prima facie are charged by the board to protect the assets and ensure that they're being utilised appropriately, that they hold their value the way they should to avoid unnecessary financial charges to the P&L. So when you start thinking about data and what is data in an organisation and how do you use it, for me as an ex-CFO and certainly someone that advises boards, I talk about, well, how are you protecting your organisation, firstly? So you've got to talk about the security side of how we're protecting this data, which is now an asset. Yeah? And that's been around for a while, cybersecurity and all that jazz, but AI is making us really think about how we put cybersecurity around the data that underpins it. We're starting to talk about the sovereignty of data, particularly for multinationals or companies that are selling into multinational countries. The amount of countries now that have got different privacy laws, the evolution of those privacy laws is starting to influence what data actually needs to be retained, what needs to be encrypted, what needs to actually just never be in the data lake that might be underpinning it. And then the last one for me is if we're going to really use AI to transform our business, is there enough data there to scale? Have we created an asset that's big enough to actually make the AI useful? And that is interesting because every organisation has plenty of data, but generally it's scattered everywhere. And it's how do you get that together and put it so it's a usable asset? So that scalability is an art form, if you like, in its own around creating a point of singular presence to then be able to drive your AI models and actually get benefit out of it.
All right, let me add one more.
Yeah, go for it.
So I want to. We had a discussion before we started the panel, and we were talking about your data. And if you think about Minecraft, going to the gaming world, you get all these blocks, and then you get to create something, right? So you create from, if it was like a sculpture, it's a piece of rock, and you create art from it. And it's the same. If you think about AI, how we think about AI in the enterprise, it is something that creates value from data. And if you think about that, you can always take your data and derive more value. And I'll give you guys another use case. A couple of years ago, I worked with a company that captured user information, and we had to anonymize it. There's some GDPR and all kinds of compliance issues around that. However, we were able to, and this is us testing how well we obfuscated the data, we were able to still, from the data, derive the sexual orientation, age group, I think location data, just through secondary and tertiary clustering algorithms and other methods. So when you think about the data, that is a use case for privacy, right? We want to avoid that. But that's the same use case for insights where you can derive value that you didn't think about before. Like for instance, to what you guys are doing, they're capturing data from games and then using that to train me to be a better gamer. How awesome is that? But you need an algorithm to kind of chisel away the value and get the value of the training data, right? So the raw data is just raw data. So the one thing that I always emphasize, data storage right now is pretty cheap, comparatively. So store it. If you're not going to use it, that's okay. But you never want to look back and say, oh, I should have. That's going back to the data scientist. You want to be able to predict. You want to make sure that there's something of value in the future that you don't know yet. So save it.
Yes, please go ahead. Thanks, Naveed.
So Johann made a very good point about data and how we use it. Of course, if you compare most of the teams that have data with the ones that don't have data, the ones that don't have data will prefer to have it so that they can build all the tools and all the products on top of it. That's why I think, to Andre's point, we need to take a very deep look at the cost of storing it and the value that it's providing and how to protect it. Because the same data, even if it is gaming data, could be used to abuse the system, as Johann's saying. So protection of it and then comparing against the cost of having that, storing the data, should be then measured against the ROI you can get from it. So that should be the driving force. Like if I have at Blitz we collect a lot of data from matches. What ROI that data is providing to us? Because if it's not providing any ROI, then we need to figure out a way to efficiently store it in a way that can be used so that we don't have that FOMO later on, like, oh, we should have saved it. But creating a tiering system, for example, to archive it so that we can pull it out later if we need it. But having all the security controls around it so that data is not abused in any other way. It's not abused, for example, whenever you talk about data, data is coming from real humans. So any abuse that can be done is going to eventually affect real people. Even if you're training models and how those models behave, even if you're doing analytics. So it's very important for every organization, big and small, to look at their data and their property and make sure that they understand the value of having that.
In general, I agree with everything that was said about the importance of the data and storing it and finding the right way to cost manage that. But there is, for financial industry, it actually has another dimension, which is that it's a regulated industry where there are certain standards about data retention and data deletion. So which means that although we would like to keep some of that data, but we cannot. And I guess that's what makes a difference between finances and the rest of the world in terms of data storage.
That's a good point. So I would say, what I would do, I would see if regulations allow, and I'm by no means a lawyer, but if you can derive insights, and instead of storing the raw data, store at least the insights. Like for instance, average number of this, the trend for that, I would store that. Can you?
Generally, yes. If it is anonymized data, aggregated data, you can do that. Another way to think about it, you could anonymize the data and train or RAG or whatever LLM model on that, so you can actually talk to that data. But I can say that from my experience, this is not yet acceptable by traditional financial institutions. It raises a lot of questions and concerns, at least for now. Possibly it will change over time, but that's where the industry is at the moment.
That's fair.
Okay. This is amazing. I feel like I'm loving this organic conversation. So tapping into the financial element, this one is for you, Naveed. I'll give you a turn. What does a typical AI investment look like when you include development infrastructure and recurring operational costs? And maybe just talk a little bit about ROI and the value of our ROI and how AI helps with that too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. It's interesting that the way things are changing now, for us, techies and geeks, AI is like a candy store, and we want to do all kinds of things with it and try it in different ways. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the ROI, and we have to look at the time investment of engineering and related resources to figure out if that is something worthwhile doing. So I'll go back to Johann's original point that we have to look at it from the business angle. We have to look at what it's going to provide, and if this time is invested in a particular endeavor, data collection, manipulation, or just storage, what is that returning to us? For us, we try to be very metrics driven. We try to be data driven, to use the same word again, about whatever we are doing, whether it's an AI project or not. And whenever we are evaluating an AI product or an AI project, one of the things you have to discuss or think about is, are you building a foundational model or not? Because there are a lot of great companies, like Johann said, are doing that right now. You're not OpenAI, you're not Google Gemini. So you are looking to use some of these foundational models to your advantage. Because building foundational model is another kind of firm that some companies may choose, and that is their ROI. OpenAI will do it because that's their bread and butter. For a lot of usage companies, the ROI comes from using these models, and we see new models almost every day now. So from us, we have to look at individual models and see which model provides us the output we are looking for in the time that we have sort of allocated for a project or a task. And if it meets that requirement, great. We invest your time, you build it up. If it's not, then we should not be committed to it. That's what I'm
It's a really interesting thing. I might just add a couple of sort of insights here from my perspective when I'm thinking about AI projects and return on investment. We all sort of sit there and you know, we all know how P&Ls work. It's, you know, how do we either get revenue up or get costs down, and that's prima facie how a lot of business cases work. But what we also start seeing with AI that really needs to be considered is how that does the AI agent or the business problem we're solving create a strategic competitive advantage, that it actually is much more than just either the revenue or the expense. You know, we're creating something that's unique that allows us to differentiate ourselves in market for a period of time. You know, all competitive advantages are a period of time in my world. So I think when we're looking there and we start thinking about, you know, do we buy off-the-shelf sort of AI agents or do we build? I think you've got to start thinking about what are you trying to achieve out of it. If it's something that is just around the revenue or the cost side, it's probably a buy an agent type thing. It's a commodity thing, right? All we're trying to do is do something better using probably an existing agent. But let's not discard the ability to create a strategic competitive advantage, and that's where you may be looking at a build type option and going out and really trying to create a differentiated way your business works.
All right, I'll stick with the examples. So I worked for Office Depot back in the early 2000s, software engineer, and I remember I was geeking out. I mean, this is like one of my first big jobs programming, so I loved it. However, we had a VP that told us, we sell pencils. Just keep that in mind. That's our primary directive, we sell pencils. So it kind of stuck with me because whenever I look at do we build versus do we buy, it's like, what do? Do we sell pencils or do we develop software? And very, very, very few times is the answer we develop software. So that's just my little from 2000 that I can tie back to that.
Thanks, Johann. Really loving the engaging conversation, and you know, you have so many amazing insights to offer up on AI. So, very honoured to have you here. Old enough or young enough? I think it's the young enough. I think we start counting backwards the older we get. So I have one other question for you. I've seen a couple of startups in the room. Some enterprises too, but I think if you had to lay out a pathway for a startup or an enterprise to go from idea to production with an AI solution, what would that look like? This actually touches into our scaling topic. So, you know, scaling with innovation. I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. So I'm happy that it's separating enterprise versus startup because there's budget constraints, obviously, with startups, and there's a lot of other things. But if you have a roadmap, and you know, I think everybody's gone through budgeting, either personal life, business life, whatever. So you always want to kind of see, okay, what can I do? What's the most I can do with the least amount of money? So I always like to start small, have an experiment, and if you think about how often do you need experts in your life, nobody here needs to have a full-time doctor unless you're really chronically sick. So we use experts all the time for periods of time in our lives, and then we don't. And I look at using AI projects the same way, where you start small, keep the cost down, get the experts for what you need it for, prove out your concept. If you're a startup, get funding, or bootstrap and get revenue. And this is something, I'm a partner in a VC studio, and we have a couple of startups as well that we incubate. And one of the deciding factors for us is, you know, is this startup, are we ready to scale? Do we need to go, you know, get investment? A big decision factor is, you know, are we generating revenue or are we trying to get investors? And that is it's an important part of what the roadmap looks like. So as a startup, you have to make that decision. If you're scaling, if you're somebody that's taking VC money, they're going to expect you to take that money if they're, maybe they have a different concept of it, but they want you to use that money. They want to see how you're going to use the money that I'm giving you to make this business grow. So that's a different approach than if you're bootstrapping and you're like, man, we got to make some profit. The features I'm going to build is going to be different. The roadmap is going to be different. The staffing is going to be different. If I'm building something with VC money, I'm going to take some money and put that into a founding engineer. I'm going to get that IP internal. But if I'm still starting to bootstrap and get it going, I'm probably going to use resources like Svitla to help me, to facilitate getting to that point where I can go and get the money to hire full-time staff. So the road is always going to be different depending if you're enterprise, if you're startup. So let's talk about the enterprise. Many enterprises, Fortune 500 companies, they've used us in the past for a couple of things, and I'll quickly touch on that. First of all, they have great CTOs, and they're super smart. They have all the education and training and experience that they needed, but they've been asked by their board, listen, we need to have AI implemented by Q2. What are you going to do? Now that CTO needs to go and struggle like, man, I don't really know about AI. Where do I get started? So typically, partners like us would come in and give them that AI leadership. That's a really good way. Instead of replacing the CTO that's doing a phenomenal job, you just educate them, upscale them, be like a fractional, a lot of times this is where I serve, like that fractional CTO/AI officer. Let's say they have that already. They're like, you know what, we're good. We've got the internal CTO with AI capabilities and everything, but we don't know which projects are going to be good ones to pick. Is this an AI project or is just a if-else statement project, right? Which we can do with software. This is where we do workshops and we help them, like, let's identify the right, again, ROI or also use cases that goes along with those projects. Now we have a stack rank of projects. Next step is, all right, do we have the expertise? Do we have that, like the doctor analogy? Do we have that data scientist? Do you need them for a proof of concept? Probably not, unless it's a contractor. So you bring somebody in that knows how to execute within 8 to 10 weeks and prove out this can be done. So that you can go to your board and say, okay guys, listen, I've demonstrated this, we have a ROI, we tested it, here's the results, we need to scale now. And this is now going to the MVP with a beta or whatever that follows that. Here's the budget, here's the timeline. So the paths that you take for startups versus enterprise, it's going to look a little different. But the common theme there is you don't want to scale too soon. And scaling could be hardware, it could be software, it could be people. So scaling needs to happen, but you need to be careful at what point you scale what technology or feature. Yeah.
I mean, I really love the point about scaling and quickly scaling and then long-term scaling. You touch on both, and I think they're great. Part of the challenge with some of the AI startups who are trying to scale right now is the human resource problem. So Svitla definitely addresses that and helps with that. But there's the other challenge of just getting enough capital to build the startup that you need to build or run the workloads that you need to run. And that is another challenge that a lot of startups are facing. Where I think Svitla's team or any team that can quickly scale you up and down can really help is saving budget for those kind of problems that has a hard requirement of actual GPUs and actual data centers or actual GCP costs. And then utilizing some of the resources around the globe to kind of save the money for the main, pricey challenges. That's what I would say I would recommend.
Wow, that one came back quickly. Thank you. So I think we're just going to have one last round of questions, and then we're going to head into the Q&A for the audience. So I had a quick question for each of you. A lot of the panel talks about, we've been speaking about ROI, the implications of scaling in terms of your business, how, the financial implications, compliance, and investments, various elements. If you had to predict how AI is going to affect the future of your business, looking at maybe the next few years, let's say the next 3 to 5 years, just a bit of a thought leadership question, how do you see AI changing the landscape of your business? I'd be really intrigued to hear with the overhang of ROI in mind and AI. Thank you.
I'm going to pass this along.
Yeah, I'll start with
I can start. Yeah, I think the biggest change we are seeing right now is AI enables us to move faster, do more with less, and deliver more, I would say, output with less input. But that's just a trend we are seeing across the board, not just specific for gaming or just software development. The expectation is much higher. You have to be able to generate a lot of content, for example, whether it's marketing content or is gaming content, in much less time, much faster, and much higher quality. So that shift is taking place already. So there's expectation from everyone to be able to do a lot more. That's the biggest trend I am seeing across the board. And I don't think it's going to slow down. I think it's going to keep going up with better models, with better technologies. We will see that. The second shift we are seeing is the integration of AI in traditional software. So there's all this cool technologies coming out. OpenAI is making really amazing stuff. Claude is doing really good with code. But there's an expectation that, plain old simple old products will have an AI component to it. So understanding that integration is going to be critical for anyone who wants to survive this new wave. That's my point of view.
Yeah, I probably take a little bit of a different perspective, I guess, when I look at it. Because there's no doubt the technology is amazing and it's getting better every day. We were talking earlier, we're saying, every 6 months it seems to change. But I'm a big believer, having been involved in technology implementations and transformation over the last 30 years, that you need acceptance from people for any technology to really work. And so I think the next 12 to 24 months is really about mass acceptance by the majority of the workforce. I don't think we're there yet. And until we get to that point where there is, then I think we'll start seeing much more use cases for AI come out. The question, the thing that worries me as a person that works in this industry is can AI replace jobs? Yes, it can. But it's also the media sensationalism around that. Is that the majority use cases for AI? I don't think it is. I don't think that's what AI is here to do. And we've got to get that message across to the majority of our workforce. Because if we don't, this is going to be a rejection of the technology. So I think there's a little bit of human psychology we need to be thinking about over the next 12 to 24 months, in addition to the technology, because we actually need to, as a society, work out how we're going to use AI properly and get society acceptable, confident enough that it's not going to cause mass job losses, that there's going to be time for people to learn different ways that their job will change. And can that happen? Yeah, we've done it throughout history. But just as, when PCs first came out and everyone said it's going to replace, it won't do that. And I think the media sensationalism needs to sort of settle, and we need to get on with educating our workforces around how it really is going to be used.
To continue the theme of jobs, I would say that AI is going to change a lot of jobs, maybe eliminate some of them, but is also going to create a lot. So the challenge is really not about the long-term future, in my opinion, but in transition. So, and in that transition, there could be an effect on many people who are not yet ready to use the new technologies, but their old jobs are not, as in demand anymore comparatively to the past. And I think that transitional period is something that we will have to focus on. And I think that people are so creative, and there were so many different events in technology development in the hundreds of years recently that I'm sure that there were similar concerns in the past, and people still survived and found the ways to grow. And I think that transition period, that's where the challenges will be. In terms of how AI will be impacting my company, and for example, I think there will be two interesting ways to look at that. So the first one is that efficiency within the company. Well, definitely all of the many businesses will benefit from AI in terms of being able to do more in shorter period of time. And that applies, I guess, to any technology-enabled company. And the second, which is specific for my company, or rather to any company in the fintech, especially in the banking or lending related field. These are regulated industries, and that means that although the technologies are available, there is not easy way sometimes to apply them because the existing standards are not allowing yet to do that. And I guess that due to the competition and the worldwide spread of that technology, there will be a push for the industry to open up to more innovation using those technologies, and that's what I hope will happen, and it will have an effect on what we build in our company.
So, as a data scientist, I don't like doing predictions if there's no data. So I can give you a probabilistic answer, right? What's the probability of something happening? I definitely think jobs like mine is going to go away. Like, definitely go away. I think, and I actually want that, because I think getting a business person the ability to ask questions that typically was, something that they had to submit to a engineering team, that submitted to the data science team, and then get the answer back. We can't move that slow anymore, right? So speeding that process up is eliminating jobs like mine. Perfectly fine with that. If you look at the panel here and the answers that we got, the one thing AI cannot do really well is be really creative. So I have a couple of friends that's musicians, and I've been sending them all these music AI generated stuff recently. That's phenomenal. It's really mind-blowing how good it is. Like hearing, Willie Nelson sing a Metallica song, right? It's like incredible. However, every one of these guys gave a different answer tonight. And if we were all trained and raised by the same parents, our answers would have been much more aligned, because our experiences was much more aligned. And AI systems today, base models, foundational models, they're all pretty much trained on similar types of data. And this is where startups, can have the opportunity to build their own models, their own, foundational models. Not a lot of companies have the gaming information that you guys have, and distinguish themselves. However, that AI model, foundationally, and how it operates is still the same as all the other models out there. Think of it as like species, right? They're all the same species. So they're ultimately going to behave the same, answer the same, just with different information, different answers. So my prediction, how that's going to affect industry and stuff, I really don't know. But what I can project with some kind of confidence is that it's going to change how we do our jobs, in the sense of what you're doing today as a task. You have 5 tasks that defines your job. It might not remove your job totally, but every single person is going to have tasks that's going to be replaced by AI. And then there's going to be tasks that's not going to be touched by AI. Last thing I'll say about that, 10 years ago, I started getting into robotics. And my team, proud to say, our robot was one of the first spot. If you guys know Boston Dynamics, the yellow dogs, my team and I were the first ones to implement one of those into production with AI that actually ran in production. And when we did that whole project, I was constantly thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to replace like working men job. If you're shoveling dirt and doing stuff like that, that job's going away. However, come to find out 10 years later, probably longer than that now, those are the difficult jobs for AI and robots to replace. It's not easy. It's the jobs that I do, sitting in front of a computer, looking at a screen all day. I don't want to say mindless. It takes a lot of mind, but it's not physical at all. So the next generation, I think, I think we all can kind of agree AI is going to take a lot of those information worker jobs. But robotics are starting to catch up. They're starting to get much better. I have friends that work at Boston Dynamics, so I see what a lot of the progress that they're making. One of our clients actually is in a super boring industry. I don't want to really say their name, but think of it as like janitors at scale that clean Starbucks and Walgreens and all those, facilities management. And I was showing my team today some of the videos where we use drones and they pressure wash, universities at scale. We have drones that fly that detect, with thermal cameras, HVACs that's got the temperature difference, with the sun baking out in Florida, and all those things taken into account, and immediately reporting that there's an issue. We have agents that scans ordinances and codes and then compiles it and tells the CVX, you guys have CVX here, right? Or Walgreens, everybody knows? CVS, sorry, CVS. Yes. So it tells the Walgreens, you have a crack in front of your front door. Did you know that? If you don't fix that, the code and ordinances for your zip code is a $1,000 fine. However, we also found this information that lawsuits in your area could be in the millions. So you better want to fix that. So my point is that somebody said on the panel that AI, and I think, Naveed, you said it, everything is going to have AI, all apps. I'm thinking everything, from the fridge, the Jetsons, we're starting to get to that point where AI is ingrained in everything, but it's also not as intrusive as what it is today. It's more helpful, and it's something where, going back to the music analogy, we were at the WeWork yesterday, and that there's one room with records, vinyl records, and I love that, because we've come full circle. People appreciate that again. And I think it's going to be the same for AI. The hype cycle is going to get over, and we're going to filter to what's really useful and what is really something that we can all use, and it doesn't feel that it's interfering with my life.
I love that. Nothing like the very hopeful. And I was actually saying to my team, I'm CMO for Svitla, and I was actually saying to them, there's nothing like getting a hand-delivered card in the mail. Like, when was the last time someone delivered a hand-delivered card instead of an email? It actually breaks through the clutter. So, sometimes the old vinyl and the classics, they mean a lot. So let's not lose touch with kind of our heritage, but also let's look to the future. And I really love these answers. It speaks volumes just hearing from you experts here on the panel. So I think on that note, we're going to open the floor for some Q&A. Some really good food for thought here on the panel. If you have any questions, I think there was one earlier, it was on ice, so please feel free to ask your questions. We'll be passing around the mic. And our panelists are here to answer some questions. So let's just see, are there any questions from the audience? I think you had one, right? Yeah, go for it.
Tasting.
All right, guys, thanks for the talk. Earlier, what I wanted to say is that I think it would be really helpful if each of you could just describe the companies that you work for right now contextually, so we can just understand, the things you're talking about. And
I've got the mic. So, Svitla Systems.
And what do you do?
Oh, I'm the Chief AI Officer.
What does the company do?
Oh, what is the company? That's a good question. So they're sponsoring the event today, and as our Chief Marketing Officer, I would probably have her describe it better than I do.
Yeah, just contextually, so understanding like how your solutions are working within different industries and things like that, right?
Yeah, lovely. So I'm also with Svitla Systems, as is Cindy and Fee. We're a technology services company, but I like to think we do four things really well and how we help clients. We're an AI company. We help companies with AI development, with AI strategy, or AI resources. We're also a cloud company, and that is about how we get things into the cloud, whether it's workloads, whether it's storage, what have you. That is a large extent a pre-enablement of a lot of the AI. We're also a data services company. So once we get the data in there, how do we structure it? How do we create the data lakes? How do we create the different data pools to feed the different models so that we can protect the data sovereignty of what we're doing? And then all the analytics that you might want to do, the big data analytics in the traditional sense. And then lastly, we're a software development company. And that's, again, we can build custom software development from scratch for a particular application stack, right through to, like what we do with Naveed and in his company, we provide resources where he has gaps that he needs, in particular software development skills. So we're an end-to-end technology services company, but that's our 4 key areas.
I can go next. Yeah, I'm Naveed. I work for Swift Media. We are mainly focused for our product called Blitz, which is a gaming stats company. So we collect a lot of data about games, and then we use that data to show the player stats about their own gameplay, and we use that to coach them to become a better player. But we have other products too. We have a Discord bot. It's used by millions of users. We also are now starting to work on some of the AI-driven products, creating immersive experiences for our users.
Great, thank you. So I would like to just take my real question now. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Wisetack. This is a fintech company. We build a buy now, pay later product, which allows financing of transactions between small businesses and consumers. Our main focus at this moment is home improvement field, so which means that imagine a use case, let's say you need to remodel your kitchen in the home, and the contractor will send you an invoice for a significant amount, and that's where we come in. We can offer loans to finance that type of transactions. I actually was surprised recently when I needed to do some home improvement, and the contractor which I was working in offered me services of my company. So that was, yeah, so that was nice. And AI is applicable to us because fraud detection, loan underwriting, all of that is a very interesting field for application of this modern technology.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was just going to be helpful for understanding, like everything that you guys were saying. So I would like to take my first question now. I have a quality engineering background. I've been working as a quality engineer for the last 20 years, and I do have some experience evaluating AI models, and this was in 2018. I was measuring precision and recall for our in-house trained model for our research team. So I wonder today, how are you guys testing your model output quality? If you could describe those systems, and are precision and recall still valid measures of output validity, I guess?
You speak my language. So I'm the technical one on the team. You can tell why I wanted to give to the marketing people. What do we do other than AI? Because I can speak AI. So recall and accuracy and F1 and precision, all of those are measures that data scientists use, but it's for a specific type of model. You also get different types of measures for other types of models. So for instance, you have AIC, BIC, you have area under curve, which is an old term that they used for radio operators. So there's many types of measurements depending on, are you doing classification, are you doing regression, what is it you're trying to measure? Now, to your question, do we still use that? Absolutely. However, I wouldn't necessarily let quality engineers test that. That is something a data scientist tests. And the reason I say that is the data scientist is the one that's going to fine-tune the model until they reach the proper precision, accuracy, recall. They're also going to do that by having holdout sets, right? So I always use this example. When you, in the United States, we do SATs, right? When you study for a SAT, you get all these questions, and if you go and take the test, you don't get those same questions unless you're cheating. You get a different set of questions that test you on that work. In data science and machine learning, we use the same method. We have a holdout set. We train a model on the 80% of the questions, and then we test them on the holdout set. And if they pass and it's a good accuracy, precision, recall, whatever the measure is, then we combine the data, we retrain it, and we do another set of testing. But now there's no holdout data. So we need, we basically have the answers built into the model, but it's a sanity check. That is something any data scientist needs to do before they hand it to QA. If QA then does the same thing, great. However, a better way to do it is have beta periods. So we always do that because you have outliers that you're not going to get in your, even if you have your holdout set. And there's also, the reason I say a data scientist should do that, there's different ways of sampling data. And I'll give you an example. If I pull data that's sequential and I go from 1 to 100 in a spreadsheet, right? If the first bunch of information is for Florida and the next is for another state and the next for another state, and I just take the first 10, that's the wrong sample because I'm missing all of the other states that's not included in the first 10. So a data scientist needs to look at the data. That's why we're scientists, right? And we need to understand how to sample the data so we can test it properly. And that goes into the test cases, the unit testing for the QA engineers. But the first time the model gets tested should never be the QA engineer. So that is the same process that I did 20 years ago, we still do today. With language models, with language models, there's additional testing, right? Because they hallucinate. They have other complexities that you don't necessarily find in some of the other types of models. Just like in time series models, you don't find some of the complexities in language models. So there's very specific tests. Now, for language models, we would test where do they miss. So it's a negative test where we kind of look at, all right, so in this test, we have that 80% curve and we're good, it answers these questions, but it misses these specific questions. And we need to determine, is that something we need to go back? Is that something we can push to production? Or do we need to fix that before we push it out to production? Again, that will never reach QA. That's part of the development cycle. There's a process called CRISP-DM, CRISP-DM. There's other processes as well, but that one specifically has 6 stages of machine learning that we apply. Are you familiar with it?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
All right.
Not at all.
I didn't come up with it. This is something that's been around 20, 30, 40 years, and it used to be used for machine learning back in the days when that was data mining, sorry. Before machine learning became popular, it was used for data mining projects, but same 6 phases still apply today.
I just wanted to add that in addition to the testing the model at training time, pretty much minimizing the error of how your model behaves. In some of the cases, which is in our case is true, you can have access to the ground truth when you have your model in production, and that really opens up the whole new way of look at the things. Like for example, in our case, when we do the underwriting of the loans, we have the luxury to know how the loan performs afterwards. And we can use that information to improve the model after that. We cannot say that about many other fields, like for example, in the generative AI space, where the answers are very probabilistic and very difficult to measure the success of the answer. So that doesn't work this way easily. But for the lucky cases, like I have, for example, we can really leverage that.
Is that because you're saying you have human feedback on the results?
Yes, both. So on the loan performance, when I say, like, imagine we are giving a loan to someone to finance their new kitchen, right? So we have the information whether that person is paying back. And this is the data which we use to fine-tune our, fine-tune probably not the right word in this scenario, but to retrain our model using that new information because we have access to that data over time. But in the language models, the situation is different, and you need to have explicit user feedback to say like whether this worked or not. And where that applies a lot, for example, in the customer support systems. Like when you got a call from a customer, like how do you know whether the AI system responded properly? So that requires a review afterwards, at least, if not for all of the cases, but at least for big enough number of them to collect the feedback that then can be used for the further improvement of the system.
Since we are, making products for gamers, we use human feedback a lot. Because of Blitz, we have a lot of access to a lot of gamers. Blitz is used by 500,000 daily active users. So we use that as a way to benchmark our models. Plus, all of us at social media, we are also gamers. So we are the first one to always test it. The challenge comes from, and this is Johann touched upon this earlier, where it is hard to predict how a model got to a certain inference. So that is where it is hard, where you can tell that something is wrong, but trying to tell why it's wrong is not as easy as looking at a code. So we have some labeling system that we can use to somewhat guess how the model was trained differently or the data was wrong, but it is a very hard problem, especially if you're trying to make a product that is very touchy-feely. You know, gamers have certain sensitivities to certain aspects of the game or the experiences, and it's hard to control that. So the best way we found is to get that human feedback. Just like an LLM, you know, you have to get that human feedback to get it performing.
And just to add to what they were saying, so the human feedback, it is, yeah, but the thing is, it never stops. So QA shouldn't stop with AI models. You have this concept of model drift as the data drift, and you have data drift. Yeah, and you'll see like ChatGPT, they give you 2 versions sometimes when they have a new model. So that human feedback is going to always continue, but that's not really the key point. The key point is you're always going to measure, you're always going to test. And what we do is like the ground truth, we use a lot of in-production testing ongoing. And we have agents. We just create AI agents, and they constantly use ground truth to test, especially if we have new models that needs to be pushed to production. The regression testing is always going to include all of the ground truth and new information, all of the ground truth and new information. So to your original question, how do we test it today? Nothing changed up until deployment. I think what's more different today than it used to be is, I want to say the last year or so, agentic AI has entered that area much more than it used to be.
I think it's evolving still. When I was doing it in 2018, there was no QA in AI whatsoever. Like, I could not find a comparable.
Not QA in your sense, perhaps, but I promise you, data scientists, that
right,
QA
they're doing
always
it
happen.
in the developer role.
You always have to. And it's because, you're welcome. That's a great question. And if you think about where data science stemmed from, right? It's when we started getting a lot of data in the internet era. That was like the kind of like what pushed it. But before that, it was called predictive analytics. It was called, bioinformatica, all kinds of terms. It stems from that background or that science background where you test but verify. If I publish a paper, I need to be able to defend my paper. And, back in the day, I don't know today anymore, but it's just that scientific principle needs to be applied still today. That should not have changed.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just a little cognizant of the time. I think we have time for one last question, and then we probably need to wrap. So, yeah, go ahead, please.
If I may. So my name is Vladimir Oshilek, affiliate faculty at the Goldman School of Public Policy, UC Berkeley. I've got a tricky question. Is AI a panacea or a threat? On the one hand, we know that AI has arrived in order to steal our jobs. But at the same time, despite the fact of this, we still have lots of tools which are very helpful, especially in our educators' belt, people working in academia. At the same time, also, we have different tools which are helping us save our time, do something quickly. And ChatGPT in particular serves as a personal assistant, and we pay only $20 per month, and it's okay for us. But what happens when, on the other hand, the Boston Dynamics robots gain the brain of ChatGPT and get some autonomy? Is it a threat or panacea? Thank you.
All right, I'll go first on this one. I love that because I think it's neither. I don't think it's that binary, right? And the reason I say that is it's definitely not a panacea. Just like inventing the vehicle is not a panacea. I like running, I like bicycling, I like riding my motorcycle. A vehicle is it's a utility. However, my wife, she likes fast cars. It's a different use for her, but it's not a panacea. Would it be indispensable? And I've heard people talk about AI as electricity. It's like, it needs to be like water, utility, something like that. I think we're pushing it in that direction. I don't think it's needed. Just like nobody needs to have a cell phone. but we have it because we've been given so much luxury or what do you call it? Like, yeah, usage by having a cell phone. So just the pure nature of it being ingrained in everything is going to make it, I don't want to say panacea, but it's going to be in everything we use. That's why what I think is going to happen, us as humans, this is the vinyl record thing. We're going to go back to the point where, like, I don't want to, like, I work in AI, but when I get home, shut off all the computers in the house. I just want to go read a book. Not a Kindle, I want to read a book. So I think that is why it's not going to be a panacea. It's something where we should still remain in control. And to your point about the robots taking over, I always want to address that with people because this is my job. I need to educate as well. If you think about how AI works, the reason that it does something, it's always, and agents, let's take agents because it's the closest example to what we currently have in the common colloquial spectrum, right? You have to give it a goal. So when I create an agent and I do, I automate some process, what makes it different from robotic automation is that I give it a goal rather than an instruction. The goal might be test this API, which we have agents that test third-party APIs and then autocorrects if the schema changes, right? If I did that traditionally, it would be that I have to define, like, this is the expected schema, and if it's not the same, match it up and then throw an error. With an agent, I don't have to do it. However, I had to give it a goal. So with the Boston Dynamics robots and those, I'm not worried that out of the blue, they're going to suddenly discover something. And I want to use another example. One of the cruise lines down in Florida wanted us to do facial recognition. And GDPR and all those kind of laws prohibit us from just doing it without people opting in. So what we did is, we're like, all right, what if we just find certain features on the face? And like, no, it still identifies people. So we couldn't get past the lawyers with that one, right? So we kind of had to step back and look at the problem a little differently and analyze if we just count the number of people, would that work? Because we're not identifying them. We're just counting people, and we were able to implement it. The thing is, we did a little bit more research. We got better lawyers, I think, and we found out that if we were to not do facial recognition, if we just identified people, faces by counting them, AI is not going to figure out who a person is if you didn't train it. And this goes back to the Boston Dynamics example you mentioned. If you don't train the model on doing something, if you don't give it a function, a reward function, yeah, that's how cute. We gotta go. It's like the. Okay. So last thing is, you need to train it with the data to recognize faces versus counting heads, and you have to give it a reward function when it does that thing. Without that, by itself, it's not going to discover it. I went way over time.
I suggest we just go dancing, yeah, okay. But really briefly, I think AI is not panacea, is not a threat per se. It's a tool, and as any other tool, it can be used for great benefit, but it also can be misused or even weaponized. And I think that the difference between AI as a tool and other, technological tools have been built before is the blast radius. And what I mean by that is that if misused or weaponized, the harm that can be brought by AI is significant. It's huge. And from that perspective, I think humans need to find the way to think about it and use it responsibly. And knowing that you are coming from Berkeley, there is a very famous expert, Professor Stuart Russell in Berkeley, who is a big proponent and leader, I would say, on the front of safe use of AI. And I agree with him from the perspective of of taking it really responsibly. You could think about it. There are other examples of similar big blast radius technologies that have been developed recently. Another example coming from Berkeley is gene editing CRISPR technology. You probably know Professor Dudna from Berkeley who developed that technology, and it has immense power. It can save lives. It can cure many diseases that couldn't be cured before, but at the same time, it can be misused in ways that can harm humanity in a big way. And for that particular type of technology, the scientists were able to establish the responsible ways of using it. So I hope, well, it's not one-to-one comparison, but I do believe that humans are smart enough to find the way to use it responsibly.
I think my perspective on it is the same. It's just a tool, right? When I talk to a lot of boards in Australia, we in Australia have been very active in the Institute, the company directors down there, about how to set up the safety guardrails. And we kind of came from a thing, when you think about a human, why are 99.9% of humans good, right? And it's the way that we've grown and created our society, and we create the rules in our society and what we teach them along the way. Do we have bad apples in society? Of course we do, right? So I think AI is a bit like that, right? We've got to be proactive in, starting with boards and forcing a discussion around that and being very clear around what we will train the AI agent in, what we won't train the AI agent in, and go from there. The other side of this debate that I think isn't being talked about, but I think governments are starting to do it in the background, is there will be the bad apple, and how do we deal with them? And I think that's an area of AI that will come to the fore, just like cybersecurity came to the fore. I think you're going to see the advent of the policeman AI, I don't know what you call it, but there will be something there, because just like we have it in society to catch the 0.1% that doesn't do the right thing, I think we're going to have to catch it in the AI land as well.
Some really great points. I would say I definitely agree with you guys that it is a tool and it could be used for good or bad. But the only differentiation is that it is a tool that can build itself, can build other tools at a rate that was not possible before. So that is a differentiation. So that makes it very dangerous. As humanity, we should look at it very carefully. There's a great book called Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari that I highly recommend everybody read. And it discusses with some of the things that AI can do on its own that was not possible by previous tools. For example, a weapon to not automatically fire itself and keep people, but this is now possible. So it's a really great question, and I agree that we need to be very careful with it.
I think we're over time. I see, is there a burning question over there? No? Okay. Oh, we have another Australian in the room. Let's go ahead. It's a quick question.
This will be quick. You spoke about, obviously, data in organisations, and the larger an organisation, the greater the complexity, and trying to bring that data together. Obviously, when you have the executive sponsorship from your CEO and board, it's easy to bring that data together because, as you know, there's a lot of politics. There's obviously the technical challenges. Do we think AI could help with that, bringing those data together? And is it a journey? Are we just at the start of that journey?
I'll take it. All right. So I love data questions because that's really the livelihood of AI, right? It needs data. So having AI bring data together, that's machine learning. That's data mining. It's ETL pipelines. It's been going on for a long time. Where I see the current wave of language models enhance that is that before it took forever. A lot of people, a lot of QA, a lot of process to get data to quickly be actionable, to have insights. And that process has been sped up tremendously. The cost has been coming down. Storage is obviously much cheaper, but it's just, that is, I wouldn't say it's new, but it's something like, if you think about what you guys are doing of all, he was telling me they have 2 petabyte of data. I used to think, I used to get this question back in the day when Hadoop was the big technology. People ask me, what is big data? How much, how many gigabytes is it? I'm like, I don't know. 10 gigabytes? 100? 1,000? I have no idea what big data is. So we're talking about petabytes now. So I think the scale, the complexity, the speed to market, all of that is improving, but to me, what's more important is how fast we get the insights out of it. And with that, everything that everybody said, the concerns is when we move fast, we break stuff. It's just the nature of it. And we better be careful what we're breaking. So.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap. So I just wanted to thank everyone on the panel. It's been a very lively discussion tonight. I think the music is telling us, as you said, Koot, to either go dance or wrap it up. So it's SF Tech Week. Very exciting to be part of SF Tech Week and have such a great panel, such a great discussion. I wake up every day very excited about going to work because I get to talk to wonderful people like Johann, Andre, and our clients, all about AI and even ethical questions around raising AI, which I heard come through in this last panel this question from our esteemed UC Berkeley colleague over there. Very interestingly, UC Berkeley actually won 2 awards today. I just found out 2 major tech awards. So Google it or look it up on your AI tool, ChatGPT or whatever. So I think that concludes the conversation. We have really run over time. There is some food. Please help yourself to food. We loved having all of you as a part of this panel. We will be rerunning the recording and on a Zoom call, online. You can catch it probably on LinkedIn or on our website. So it's not every day we have such fantastic, panelists. And if you have any questions for the panel and you didn't get to ask them, please direct your questions to our panelists who will be here for a short time. We're going to wrap soon. We don't have the venue for that much longer. But thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a real pleasure and honor. Thank you.